everyone. Welcome to the Carolina Weather Group. I'm really excited about this interview tonight. We have with us Paul Barys. He is the chief meteorologist at WRCB in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So if you're in the North Carolina mountains, Western North Carolina, if you just go over the Appalachians, that's where you'll find Paul there in Chattanooga. And Paul, welcome to the show tonight. We're happy to have you. And we were just talking a little bit off camera about your weather career. So that's going to be my first question to you. Tell us a little bit about your weather journey, and it's expanded for 40 some years and 36 years at one station. So let us know a little bit about your weather journey.
It's a unique situation, Scotty. I've run into many people who are in this business 46 years. I tell people that's 4 TV lifetimes. So because people just don't last that long. A lot of them get tired of it, and the business has changed so much. I've seen it from its super basics to what we have right now, which is, to me, is a miracle. I never imagined when I started in television that anything would be like it is right now. The interesting thing is I graduated back in 1973 from Northern Illinois University. At the time, it was the only state school in Illinois that had meteorology. And I never, ever, ever intended to go into television. There wasn't even a thought in my mind. I had a hard enough time getting in front of my synoptic meteorology class and giving a forecast to my professors. Although I wasn't as scared as my lab partner was. He was even more scared than I was. They'd always ask us trick questions afterwards. And the final question in the synoptic class was always, "Well, do you think you're right?" And I said, "Yeah." That's why I spent the last half hour talking about it. So
it's always that second guessing. I feel like it's even to that point now, especially in our areas. Snow's not the biggest thing, but you're always second guessing yourself when you're talking about snow. Am I really right? What did I miss?
That's right. So what happened is I graduated. I thought the hard part was over. The hard part was just beginning. Because I had to get a job. And at that time, this is 1973, I thought I'd get a job with the National Weather Service, like most people did. And it just didn't happen. It wasn't working out. At the time, they had a hiring freeze. At least that was the excuse they gave me. I really didn't even get to the point of sending much stuff in, my background, my grades, and all that kind of thing that they needed. They just said, "We're not hiring right now. You may come back in 6 months, a year. We'll see what happens." So I was lucky enough to live in the suburbs of Chicago, and I was able to get a job with a private weather service in the Chicago area at the time, was called Central Weather Service. It was owned by a fellow named Earl Finkel. And Earl was a very, very good forecast. Now, you have to remember this. You're way too young to know this. But back in 1974, when I was working there, we hardly had any type of, no radar to speak of. There was no satellite to speak of. We didn't have computer models that were worth anything. We had, at the time, I think the LFM model, which you probably have never seen, was just beginning. That was called the linear fine mesh model. And we used to call it the lousy forecast model. It was called the LFM. And then the new one came out called the NGM, and that was supposed to be super duper. And nested grid model, they called that. And we used to call it the no good model. So,
I feel like we could still name some of our models today, some of that.
That's right. So these were just American models, and that's all we ever saw. But where I worked, we were not allowed to look, not much less use. We were not allowed to look at the models at all. Wow. Because the boss, Earl, had a way of forecasting, which is almost impossible to describe. And I didn't know it when I started there. But all the fellows that worked there for him, most of them were older than me. There was one fellow maybe 1 year older than me, and the rest were older guys, probably at least 5 to 10 years older than I was. And they'd worked for him for years. So I was the new guy in town, and I had to learn from scratch. I thought I knew how to forecast, but I didn't. But his technique was what he told me was an old Korean War technique. And when he was in the Air Force, he learned this technique. You got to remember, there were no computer models back then. So how do you forecast? Well, it's pattern recognition mainly, but you have to prog out the troughs and the ridges if they're going to be deepening, if they're going to be weakening, are they positively tilted, negatively tilted, and how fast they would go. And he had a technique to do that. And it's I can't even remember it because I haven't used it in so long now. But it was a technique that worked sometimes and didn't work others. It obviously wasn't perfect, otherwise we'd still be using it. So I learned that, and then all we really got were the from the what used to be called the Difax charts that came off an old Alden print fax machine, and it would go and it would come out slow, very slow. It wasn't and then later on, 5-10 years later, they started printing out faster, but this was a slow process. And we were all excited. We get the 500 millibar and the 700, the 850, and we look at the 300 too. And but we would have to, especially the 500 millibar chart was the one we looked at, and we would have to line up the troughs, prog them out, see where they're going, and that's how we would make. There were never 7-day forecasts. We would always prog out the 5-day forecast, and we had different clients. Some of the clients that I enjoyed working with the most, since I was just out of college and a Chicagoan, we worked for the White Sox and the Cubs and the Milwaukee Brewers. And there were sometimes I would call up the Brewers because I worked a lot of weekends. And I would call up the owner of the Brewers, and it was Bud Selig, who ended up being the commissioner. Yeah. So I would end up calling him and say, Mr. Selig, this is Paul down at Central Weather. We see a line of thunderstorms coming your way in about 10 minutes or half hour from now. It's going to be hitting you. It'll probably last about 45 minutes. And he'd say, oh, thanks a lot, Paul. I could see the lightning off in the distance. And so I always thought I was a member of the team that way. I thought it was cool. But there was one negative to that. One weekend I worked, I think it was in April, I came in, and the fellow who was the lead forecaster, that's Saturday morning, and it was a Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember. No, it was a Sunday morning. And it had been sleeting in Chicago. And Montreal was in town to play the Cubs. And the forecaster, John Thurston, his name was, I'm going to be 70, so John had to be at least 75 to 80 by now if he's still alive. I hope to God he is, but I never saw him after this. And you'll realize why. What happened is that he made the forecast. They're not going to play the game today. It's sleeting. So the Cubs said, well, what's it going to be like tomorrow? We have an open date on Monday, and so does Montreal. Can we get the game in then? And he said, it doesn't look much better. So they told Montreal to go, get on the plane, take off. Next day was sunny and 60 degrees.
No.
Now that was bad enough. And John wouldn't have gotten in trouble for that, except for the fact that it went into the Chicago Tribune, the newspaper. It said at the top, Cubs private weather service, misses the forecast, and Montreal headed out, so they can't play today. Now, when my boss saw that, he could not. That's one thing he could not stand. He could busted forecasts that happened all the time, but don't get it in the paper. And it wasn't John's fault that it went in the paper, but he fired him. Wow. He fired him. He lost his job because of a bad forecast. Wow. And I realized this is for real. That's pressure.
Yes.
That's a lot of pressure. So I ended up working there for 9 months. And I didn't work there long. I learned about as much as I could. And I realized, since I was only getting paid $2.65 an hour in 1974, that I wasn't going to be able to live in the suburbs of Chicago or anywhere near Chicago at $2.65 an hour. So I can't even remember what minimum wage was, but it was probably somewhere similar to that. And so I decided, just one other story here, we got time. Since I was the low man on the totem pole, I got elected to work with WBBM TV, Channel 2 in Chicago, because they wanted us to consult their new weathercaster, who was a model. Her name was Melody Rogers, and she was the weekend weather person. Now, Melody was the sweetest person in the world. She's very pretty, beautiful voice, but she knew nothing about weather. And remember, these are in the days when there were no computers. There were maps on the wall. You had an Illinois map, a Chicago map, and you had a national map. And you had magnets, and you had to put the little front in with the magnets, and the temperatures with little magnets and all that. It was a very simplistic show. And in those days, the person who was giving the weather was the star. The maps weren't the start. In today's world, you know, the graphics are jumping around, spinning around. Everybody's looking at the graphics. But in those days, there wasn't much to look at except the weather person. And that's the reason they hired Melody, because she was so pretty and she had a nice voice. Plus, she had done commercials with the coach of the Bears, whose name was Abe Gibron. So it was called, and Abe wasn't that good looking a guy. I mean, he was short and squat, and he didn't pretend to. He was the coach. But it was Beauty and the Beast type commercials for Ford commercials. They had Ford commercials on it. So that's how she got a little bit famous. So they hired her, said, I'll let Melody do it. Because weather back in those days was a throwaway. It wasn't anything like it is now. And so I had to give her briefings. And after I watched her do it, I did a number of weeks, and I would watch her. And I looked at the other lead forecaster at the time. I said, Wayne, I could do that. And he said, no, you couldn't. He said, you couldn't do it. No. I said, but a light bulb went off in my head. So I went off downtown. I quit, and I took some classes at a school in Chicago called Columbia College, which was a broadcasting / radio / right now it's very good for theater. There's a lot of theater people in Chicago. It's not like Columbia School of Broadcasting. It's a college. It's an accredited college. And it was just starting in those days. So I went there for a while. All the teachers were professionals from Chicago. So I learned a lot from those professionals. And I asked them a bunch of questions. And the fellow told me, this is how you're going to have to get a job, because you have no experience. You have never even been on radio, worth mentioning. So I went to the public library in Chicago. And I got the names of every TV station in the country and addresses. I sent 500 letters and resumes out. And I cut out the top 10 markets because I figured that's never going to happen. In reality, I probably should have cut out the first 50 markets. It would have saved me a lot of postage. So I sent all that out. And then I got 100 responses. And most of them were nice letterheads and saying, we'll put you in our thoughts and prayers, whatever. They're not going to hire you. Out of that 500, I got 4 that said, less than 1%, said 4, send us a videotape. So I said, videotape? How do I make a videotape? There were no cameras back in those days, no phones, nothing like that. I had to go to a private production house in Chicago and make a very crude black and white, reel-to-reel tape that I had to send out. And I sent 4 of them out. First 3 said no, for one reason or another. One of them couldn't see it because they didn't have facilities for that tape. And one of them just I don't know what happened to it. It was our competing station here now in Chattanooga. I sent one to Chattanooga.
Wow.
And I never heard from him again. So I had 2 copies of it. So the last copy I sent off finally was to Washington, North Carolina. Okay. That's a small market in Eastern North Carolina. And they came back and they said, we'd hire you, but you also have to be a reporter and you have to be a photographer. And in those days it was film. So I had to learn, I basically went to school for 2 years in Washington, North Carolina to learn broadcasting. And I learned it. I learned how to do the weather. I was a 6 and 11 meteorologist, first meteorologist that market ever had. They'd never seen it before, but they wanted to promote it, and they did. They did a good job because they bought an old AVQ-10 radar from some airplane, and they put it on top of their tower. It was black and white, and it would show where the rain was, just like an old aviation radar. And nobody else in the market ever saw anything like that. But I worked there for about 2 years. I met my wife there, and then I got next job was in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And I worked there for 5 years. And then my next job after that was in Cleveland, Ohio. And I worked there for 3 years. I ended up working with Al Roker. I was the first full-time weekend guy, Channel 3 in Cleveland, Ohio, which was an owned and operated station, ever had. Everybody else had been part-time. So, and there was only a 2-man, it was me and Roker. And there was no morning weather at that time. Nobody did. They had an anchor man read the forecast. That was the morning weather. So I did the weekends for about 3 years. I volunteered to do the morning weather 3 days a week. And this. Now listen to this. You can laugh at this. But I went up to management at WKYC in Cleveland, Ohio, and I said to them, I think it would be good to do do a morning weather segment because you had a 6:30 to 7 o'clock show. And they said, morning? Why would anybody want to watch weather in the morning? And I swear that's true. I swear that's true. And I said, well, people, they're getting up in the morning. They want to know what's happening and all that. And we're the only station who would be doing it. And we were. And so I did that 3 days a week, and I had 2 days off, and the anchorman read it, the other time, 2 days a week. And so I worked there 3 years. And then I got, the station had been in last place for a long time, and they brought in what they call a fix-it news director. And the news director came in, and he decided that I wasn't good enough. And he got rid of half the newsroom, actually.
Wow.
So so I was unemployed for 3 months, and then I got the job here in Chattanooga, and I figured Chattanooga, where's that? Oh, that's where I sent that first tape. Yeah, but it wasn't the same station. This is a different station. So I said, okay, well, I came down here, and they offered me the job, and I said, well, I signed a 1-year contract. And I thought I'd be here 1 year, and it's 35 years later, I'm still here. So
that's crazy.
Isn't that a crazy story?
Yeah, it's like just a full circle. That's amazing. Well, being there, you've been able to cover some events, and I know one of those, not directly while you was in Chattanooga, but you was able to cover or at least forecast the 74 tornado outbreak.
But the 74, I was in at Central Weather Service then. Yeah.
Any recollections of that?
Oh, yes. Yes. Because you saw the movie Twister. I'm sure you've seen the movie Twister.
Yes.
And if you watch the first 5 minutes of the movie Twister, you're going to see, it looks like they're in a weather office somewhere. It's like the National Weather Service. And if one fellow says to another, this is going to be a real bad day. That's what they said.
Yeah.
Now, the truth is, and I'm not exaggerating, when I was there that morning, and we had a briefing. Earl Finkel would give us a briefing. He'd show you the charts. We'd look at the charts. He would explain his forecast, which is the one you were going to use. And he would explain all that. And he looked at the 500 chart, and he just looked at it for about 10 seconds. And he turned around to all of us and he said, this is going to be a real bad day.
Oh, wow.
That's exactly what he said. Now, the movie Twister came out later. When I saw that in the movie, I went,
I've heard that before.
did Earl consult? He didn't. So, but that's how it happened. And then, see, in Chicago, there were no bad storms that day. And most of our clients didn't really have bad storms. It was further south. It was Louisville on southward. We covered mainly the Midwest for most of our clients. And Earl did a lot of aviation forecasting too. But we had an old, you've probably never seen this, an old teletype. It was called the National Weather Wire. And it got every warning and watch that came out across the country. And it was the old type that went like that. And it would print, it would be slow. It was nothing like they do now. And that thing, and every time there was a warning or watch, it would go ding, 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 ding. And then it did that all day long. Wow. We were getting warnings that were 4 hours old because it was so backlogged.
Wow.
And I didn't see, you got to remember, there's no videos back then.
Right.
You don't turn on the TV and say, well, look at that tornado. Oh, look at that tornado. No, there was nothing. There wasn't, because it was all film back then. So we didn't see anything. We didn't know how bad it really was at that. We knew there were a bunch of warnings, but we didn't know where all the tornadoes were. And I never actually saw videos until they really started coming out on YouTube and stuff. That's really when I started seeing what tornado, because I've never seen one in person. I'm always stuck in a building somewhere, forecasting them. So we were there for the 74. That was the first one. Then we had in 78, when I was in Fort Wayne, we had a blizzard, and people were really surprised by that. Fortunately, I forecasted well, and we had headlines for the day before. The anchor would give a headline, sports would give a headline, and then I would give a headline. And my headline for that day was, so you think you're going to work tomorrow? That was my headline.
Recently, though, I was just looking through some Chattanooga stuff today, and April 12th, 2020, last year.
That was Easter.
Which, for those who are listening and watching tonight, this is the same storm system that produced EF4 tornadoes in South Carolina early that Monday morning. So same storm system we're talking about. But Paul, that also affected you all. And again, another EF4 tornado. Those are nothing to sneeze about. I mean, those are strong.
Yeah, we had probably the worst ones were in a smaller county called Murray County in Georgia, and it killed the most people. And that was a little earlier. And then later that afternoon and evening, it was later in the evening, we had one that came right over Hamilton County, which is the county that Chattanooga's in. It's the most populated county in our viewing area. And it came off the ridge, not too far from Lookout Mountain, came down and really intensified quickly. It wasn't one that was coming from miles and miles away. And as it formed, we saw, I was here and our weekend person was here, and she did a great job. And she's been promoted to mornings since I'm retired. She got because she did such a good job, and she's only been in the business 2 years. I mean, it's unbelievable how smart she is. But she came and she was helping me out. I was on the air though, and I was talking about it. Then I saw the gate to gate form in southern Hamilton County, and I said, I mean, a real strong gate to gate. So I clipped on the speeds, and with all the barren stuff we have, I could see that the shear was over 100 miles an hour. So I knew there was a tornado. I knew it was a tornado. I said, folks, it's definitely a tornado. Whether it's hitting the ground or not, I can't tell you for sure, but you should all take cover in southern Hamilton County. And then she said, Paul, you need to look at this. And then they punched up her radar. We have two of the same radar, and they pumped hers up. And it was the dual Paul showing the debris ball, the CC. And all I said was, oh my. That's all I said. I said, folks, this is on the ground. This is confirmation. It's picking up debris right now. And it was going through one of the most populated areas of Chattanooga. I said, I can't believe this is happening again. I just can't believe it. And we weren't on the air for 12 hours then, but we were on the air most of that evening, Easter evening. And when I went to work, I can't even remember if I did the newscast because I wasn't supposed to do the newscast. It was Easter. I was supposed to day off. I may have left because after that line passed, that was it.
Right.
So she may have put the show together. But I remember when I left the building that night, I said, after they look at the debris tomorrow, I said to myself, there's going to be at least 40 people dead. And I think it ended up only 4 people died. And I mean, it was actually an EF3, Scott.
Okay.
It was an EF3, but it was just devastating. These people were like in shock, total shock. It was close to a 4. I think it was high end 3. So.
And again, this also during the COVID pandemic. So, that even makes it even more crazier. One final question and a half. You've been in Chattanooga for so long. For those folks, what draws you to Chattanooga, or what's kept you there, I guess is a better question. Tell us, promote the city a little bit. What's so great about Chattanooga? Okay.
When I moved here, my girls were 1 and 3. And so they really don't remember Cleveland, Ohio, because they were born in Cleveland. But they came down here and they lived their whole lives in Cleveland. And it's just there's a thing in downtown called the Tennessee Aquarium. Before they built the and it's a beautiful place. It resembles the aquarium in Baltimore, the National Aquarium in Baltimore. It's very similar. If you look at it, you go, ooh, it looks like a twin. But it's really well done. And that was the first thing that went downtown that started bringing people into downtown. Because when I moved here, there was not much downtown. There was really nothing. Now, downtown is a happening place. You can hardly find a parking spot downtown on the weekends. There's so much fun. There's so many recreational things to do. Before it was, are you a fisherman? Well, that's good because we got lots of fishing around here. There's a lot more than fishing going on around here now. There's just so many different places. Got museums. The restaurants are loaded downtown. Once this COVID thing gets over with, it'll be even better. It's just a happening place. And a lot of times young reporters would come in who were single and all that. So what do we do in this town? There's nothing happening. Well, there's things happening now. Yeah. So it's just a wonderful place. And it's actually beautiful. If you drive through on a nice day through Chattanooga, it's absolutely gorgeous. In my opinion, it's the prettiest city in Tennessee. by far and away.
I think folks need to go check it out. I've only been once, but I want to go back now that I'm older and able to enjoy it. So last question, Paul, you hinted at it earlier. I believe July of 2021 is your retirement month.
July 2nd, right.
July 2nd. So what's retirement look like after weather? Are you one of those, or you just kind of just look at the models casually, where you still be involved? I mean,
I'll probably, the only time I'll really look at it that much, and hopefully I won't be super bored to have to look at it more. But the only time I really look at it is when big storms are coming.
Yeah.
Because my wife is tired of being what she calls a weather widow.
Right.
Every time there was a storm, I wasn't there. I was here.
Yeah.
So now I'll be able to watch the storms. I'll be able to look at them. Somebody asked me, my daughter always asks, Dad, what's going to happen? But she's almost 40 years old now. And I still, and I'm sure people will ask me, and I'll have to stay up to date on stuff like that. And I'll look at the weather charts and all that. And I can look at the radars just like you guys do,
Yeah.
It's fun. I'll always be a weather geek. I'll be a weather geek till the day I die.
Well, Paul, it has certainly been a great conversation with you, and we appreciate you hopping on with us and telling us your story. And we wish you a great retirement. I know you've still got a few weeks left as of this recording, but we just certainly appreciate what you have given to the Weather Enterprise, and we definitely hope you have a great retirement and enjoy kicking it back and not worrying about those tornadoes much anymore.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about wall to wall.
That's right. That's right. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time here on the Carolina Weather Group.